all the people I talk to, I work with, I study with, they're being really nice to me. As long as I reach out, I mean, as long as the international student goes, I know a lot of Chinese students like to stay inside their circle, like to keep in like their own world, like they don't like to reach out. I do feel like if you try to reach out, the American student like to help us. Like, just what's your attitude toward them?
Well, they're pretty nice. Even they didn't work hard sometimes, do feel free to talk to them, and they will be a really nice person.
Most of them are good.
They're friendly to each other.
Yeah, most of them are friendly. But there are like still some like minor students have some discriminations. Yes, like yeah, that's true.
Simplest example is that when you're in class, there's some American students, they don't like to talk with you much. I think that's some disrespect.
Yeah, true. When you do some like group works or like team works, they don't usually give you any like things to do. They will like do them alone.
Maybe just because they don't understand a different culture. I mean,
overall, I think the American students here are different than that of Chinese, also different than the students and people in the cities as well. In the countryside, I think people are more generous and they often tell you the truth, and they work hard and they play harder.
Yeah, I feel like some American students are amazing. They work hard as Asian students and play hard as American students. Yeah, that's what I think.
I would actually like to travel more in China, into Western China. I haven't been to the Beijing area, but I'd like to go to Inner Mongolia too and see all of the different sites.
I probably wouldn't be able to go if they have like really bad air quality some places.
I want to go to the Winter Festival in Harbin. I'd really like to do that.
I've never been there, so I would just like to travel over and explore the area.
Yeah, pretty much the same for me. I just think traveling is the best way I could really say I would want to experience anything there.
The area that I work in is in sustainability, all right? And so, of course, there's tremendous challenges in China with, of course, increasing urbanization, and along with that goes, and as the economy continues to rise, increasing number of automobiles, and so there's pollution issues, there's infrastructure issues. There's also the abandonment issues at many empty houses in China, right? And so that's become a bit of a problem with what's going on. And so some challenges, just growth, challenges of growth, right? As all economies grow, there will be challenges, but we do need to worry about and think about food, water, shelter, transportation, because we need to be thinking about the next generation, your generation, but also your children's generation. So how do we make sure that they have at least as good of quality of life as we do? So if I have a concern about China, it would be that. And so, you know, how do you control growth while providing, you know, all of the things that everyone wants?
I would say just providing a high standard of living for everyone.
I think maybe the government is kind of oppressive, it seems like, of China. That's at least the impression I get with a lot of the censorship that you hear about on the news here in the U.S. about internet censorship. And I think that's really kind of a government issue, and it's kind of a relic of the bygone era of, you know, communism. And but I think China is really starting to you know, pull its way out of that, become a lot more progressive in seeing, you know, democracy and being capitalist. It seems like their economy has really flourished. And I just hope to see that they continue that development to be more free.
I guess I don't know enough about China to talk about negative things in China. I know I don't like the current political perspectives from the other party about China, but my experience has been that every people have something good and something bad, and sometimes that it's my perceptions that make it good or bad rather than what there really is. My experience with the Chinese has just been wonderful, and I'd like to keep on expanding it.
Yeah, of course, my experience with all Chinese people I know here in America has been extremely positive. I've never actually had any negative experiences with anyone I've personally met. So
I just hope that in that process, cultures change all the time, right? And it's a natural process. I just hope that the changes that China is going through now don't make it lose their identity in order to be more like this country.
Western.
The rich heritage.
Yeah. I think that could be a pity if you lose part of your heritage, part of your identity in trying to become more whatever it is that money or whatever.
I'd like to figure out how I can actually go and visit China in a couple of weeks, because I don't have months and years. And with such a rich, long tradition, how could I possibly see it all in one visit? I'd like to know more about the literature, the history of the people, how people do things in China. Yeah, I think I'd like to know more about the people of China.
I like to know more about the languages of China. I know there are about 200. They are wonderful things. Every time I discover a new one, it's like, oh my god. And food, I enjoy.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, actually.
I've tried mostly the one in Hong Kong, near Tianjin, and in Shanghai, and I love that spiciness and that tanginess and that.
Yeah, there's just this idea that that companies taking away jobs and just going to China because it's cheaper. But I mean, that's just the reality of life, and yeah, that's just how it is. One thing that I would say negative is because I had, like, my brother went over and I had some friends that went over, and they'd always just bring like boxes full of just authentic Nike jerseys that were reproduced, but for like $1. It's just like, man, it happens, like, people download illegally here and stuff too, and it happens here too. I don't know, for me it's just more like materially like apparent, so.
That actually reminds me, of, I think the only thing that I would call, that I would say that's pervasive in the media about China, but it's not just China, it's things like this are going on in the US too, is human rights issues, underpaid workers, or what we would call sweatshops, which is factories which are underprivileged or things like that. But these are so prevalent all throughout the world, but that's a very common image that we see in China, is that factory workers are unhappy, or that they're underpaid or whatever, but we don't ever explore, I don't think, very deeply into the reasonings behind that, or what the significance of those things are very well. So I think we just get misconceptions all over the place. I think in order to understand really China, or to get a good view of China, you'd have to really travel to the place. I mean, just I think some ideas of America that you guys may have had of the US were probably maybe untrue, or that you were incorrect about before you traveled here. So
maybe just have stereotypes.
Yeah. Exactly. That's all we have anymore. That's all we have is stereotypes of nations and so. Negative views that are, I would hate to say that I have negative views about any country, because I haven't traveled to China, and so I don't know China really at all. But typical, standard U.S. responses to the question like this would be that, China's communist, or that, they're an economic power and they're threatening the U.S., or they're, just trying to manufacture all of our clothes, or that, we're outsourcing all of our jobs to China, and things like this. But, these things are, there's grains of truth in them, but it's not these are negative things that should, keep anybody from traveling to China or keep anybody from like trying to meet Chinese people. Like, these are things that I think are just, I think they are blown way out of proportion. That like these things shouldn't define a nation. That like the fact that China is a huge manufacturer in the world isn't a negative thing. That it's just the way things are. So I think people just get like really nationalist and like kind of cling onto the American like hopes and dreams that we're the greatest nation in the world, and people just don't want to let that idea go. And I think that just blinds people, and anybody else who's competing with us, then we suddenly hate them. So that's what I think the big problem is.
I want to like know more about American politics
and how they live their, lives in their spare time.
How do Americans see China as a growing power to challenge United States authority in international relations?
Yeah, and do they feel like being threatened by the growing China's power?
Or even Chinese student in United States campus?
Yeah, true.
I have been in America for 8 years, but I still can't say that I know the 360 degrees of America. So what I would like to know more about is about the government, and along with the election process, because the election process for the president is totally different than that of China's. So I want to know how the election in the democratic system works.
Okay, I feel like they pay more attention on their own life, but not on, for what happened globally, what happened internationally. They don't care. I feel like they care more about themselves, their own families. I know that makes sense, but if they can pay more attention to what happened in the world,
I agree.
I think it's better.
I definitely agree. Yeah. I think, yeah, Jilly definitely hit the nail on the head there.
This is the time when our dreams are made come alive.